The transport ship Meridian shook as it entered the atmosphere of Kepler 442b. Dr. Elena Rodriguez pressed her face against the small window and watched the planet grow larger below. The world looked peaceful from space with its blue oceans and green forests, but Elena knew better. This planet held secrets that had killed hundreds of people. Elena checked her research papers one more time. The Shadow Maw files made her stomach turn. Every report was the same story. Scientists would land on the planet, set up their equipment, and within days they would be dead. The creatures responsible were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The ship's captain, a blue-skinned Altarian named Vex, walked over to Elena's seat. His forearms moved nervously as he spoke. "Dr. Rodriguez, I must ask you again. Are you sure you want to do this? The research station has lost 12 teams in the past 5 years. These creatures are not normal predators." Elena looked up at the worried captain. "I've read all the reports, Captain Vex. That's exactly why I need to be here. Everyone who has studied these creatures approached them the wrong way." "The wrong way?" Vex's large eyes blinked slowly. "They approached them with weapons and shields. How else should one approach a creature that can cut through steel with its claws?" Elena smiled and pulled out a photo from her bag. It showed her sitting next to a large grizzly bear back on Earth. The bear looked calm and peaceful next to her. "This is Bruno. He's 8 feet tall and weighs 600 pounds. His claws can tear a person apart in seconds. But look at him in this picture." Vex stared at the image. "It looks ... gentle. How is this possible?" "Understanding, Captain, patience, and most importantly, respect." Elena put the photo away. "Every creature has reasons for its behavior, even the ones that seem like monsters." The ship landed at the research station with a loud thud. Elena gathered her bags and walked to the exit. Captain Vex followed her, still looking worried. "Dr. Rodriguez, the station commander will meet you at the landing pad. Please listen to him. He has kept his people alive for 6 months, which is longer than most." Elena nodded and stepped out of the ship. The air on Kepler 442b was thick and humid. Strange bird-like creatures flew overhead, making sounds she had never heard before. In the distance, she could see the dark forest where the Shadow Maws lived. A tall man in military uniform walked toward her. He had short brown hair and tired eyes that had seen too much death. "Dr. Rodriguez? I'm Captain Lisa Harper, station commander. Welcome to Hell." Elena shook the captain's hand. "Thank you for having me, Captain Harper. I know this wasn't an easy decision." "Easy?" Harper laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The Galactic Council wants to blow this planet to pieces in 30 days. You're our last hope to prove these creatures can be dealt with peacefully." No pressure, they walked toward the research station. The building was made of strong metal and had energy shields around it. Guard towers stood at each corner with weapons pointed at the forest. "Tell me about the latest attack," Elena said as they entered the building. Harper's face became dark. 3 weeks ago, a team of Vorthic scientists thought they could capture a young Shadow Maw for study. They used stun weapons and nets. The creatures ... don't forgive easily. Inside the station, Elena met the research team. Dr. Jake Morrison was a young human biologist with red hair and freckles. He looked excited to meet Elena, unlike the others. "Dr. Rodriguez, I've read all your papers on Earth predators. Your work with wolves and big cats is amazing. But these creatures are different. They're smarter than anything we've seen." Elena sat down at the main table. The other team members looked at her with doubt in their eyes. There was Dr. Zektar, a reptilian Vorthak with green scales and yellow eyes. Next to him sat Hivemind Nexus 7, an insectoid Chitauri that spoke in clicking sounds. "Dr. Rodriguez," Dr. Zektar said in his deep voice, "I respect your work, but you do not understand what we face here. The Shadow Maws are not Earth animals. They are killing machines that show no mercy." Elena leaned forward. "Tell me about their behavior patterns. When do they attack? How do they hunt?" "They attack anyone who enters their territory," Nexus 7 clicked. "They hunt in groups of 5 to 10. They are silent until they strike. By then, it is too late. But why do they attack? Elena asked. What triggers their aggressive behavior? The team members looked at each other. Dr. Morrison was the first to speak. Well, usually it happens when we set up equipment near their nesting areas, or when we use vehicles that make loud noises, or when we shine bright lights into the forest. Elena nodded slowly. So they attack when they feel threatened or when their territory is invaded. Of course they do, Harper said. They're predators. That's what predators do. Not always, Elena said quietly. Show me the attack footage. Harper activated the main screen. Video clips played showing the shadow maws in action. Elena watched carefully as the creatures moved through the forest. They were beautiful in a terrifying way. Their black scales seemed to absorb light, making them nearly invisible in the shadows. They moved with perfect coordination, like dancers performing a deadly ballet, but Elena saw something else in the footage. Something the others had missed. Look at this clip, she said, pointing at the screen. Watch the alpha male when the young one gets hurt. In the video, a shadow maw had been wounded by energy weapons. The largest creature in the group immediately moved to protect the injured one. It made low rumbling sounds that seemed to calm the wounded animal. They care for each other, Elena said. They have family bonds. So do earth wolves, Harper replied. That doesn't make them safe. Elena stood up and walked to the window. She could see the dark forest in the distance. Somewhere out there, the shadow maws were living their lives, raising their young, and protecting their territory. I want to observe them, she said. The room became silent. Dr. Zektar's scales changed from green to dark red, which Elena knew meant he was angry or afraid. Observe them, he said. From where? The last observation team was found in pieces scattered across half a mile of forest. Elena turned back to the group. I want to observe them from outside, in their natural habitat, without weapons or shields. That's suicide, Harper said firmly. I won't allow it. Captain Harper, I understand your concerns. But every team that has studied these creatures has approached them as enemies. They've used weapons, built walls, and invaded their territory with machines and bright lights. What if we tried a different approach? Jake Morrison leaned forward. With interest. What kind of approach? Respect, Elena said simply. We treat them like intelligent beings instead of monsters. We observe from a distance without threatening them. We learn their patterns without interfering. And when they kill you? Harper asked. Elena smiled. Then you'll have 30 days to prepare for the planet's destruction. But if I'm right, if these creatures can be understood, then we save an entire world. The room was quiet for a long moment. Outside, strange sounds came from the forest as the planet's two suns began to set. Elena knew that the shadow maws were most active during the night hours. I'll need basic camping equipment, she said. No weapons, no energy shields, no communication devices that might seem threatening. Just me, a tent, and some food. This is insane, Dr. Zektar said. Maybe, Elena replied. But sometimes insane is exactly what the universe needs. Captain Harper looked at Elena for a long time. Finally, she nodded slowly. You have 3 days to prove this approach works. If you're not back by then, or if we detect any sign of trouble, we're coming after you with everything we have. Elena nodded. 3 days. That's all I need to make first contact. As night fell over Kepler 442b, Elena prepared for the most dangerous experiment of her life. Tomorrow, she would walk into the domain of the galaxy's most feared predators armed with nothing but her knowledge of animal behavior and her belief that understanding could triumph over fear. The shadow maws were waiting. Elena woke up before dawn on her first day of observation. The research station was quiet except for the humming of machines and the soft sounds of alien night creatures outside. She dressed in simple brown clothes that would blend with the forest, and checked her equipment one final time. Her backpack contained only basic items: water, food, a small tent, and a notebook. No weapons, no communication devices, no technology that might seem threatening to the shadow maws. She also carried a small recorder to document her observations. but it was designed to be silent and invisible. Jake Morrison met her at the station's exit. His young face looked worried in the dim morning light. "Elena, are you sure about this? We could set up cameras in the forest instead. You don't have to get this close." Elena smiled and adjusted her backpack. "Cameras won't tell us what?" "We need to know, Jake. I need to see how they interact with each other, how they communicate, how they live. That requires being there in person." "But what if they attack you?" "Then I'll have learned something important about their behavior," Elena said. "Every action teaches us something, even the dangerous ones." Captain Harper approached them with a grim expression. She handed Elena a small emergency beacon. "This is a compromise," Harper said. "It's completely passive unless you activate it. No signals, no energy output, nothing that should threaten them. But if you're in real danger, press the button. We'll be there in 5 minutes." Elena took the beacon and clipped it to her belt. "Thank you, Captain, but I hope I won't need it." "So do I," Harper replied. "Good luck, Dr. Rodriguez. Bring back something that will save this planet." Elena walked through the station's energy shield and into the wild forest of Kepler 442. The morning air was cool and filled with the sounds of waking creatures. Strange plants grew everywhere, some as tall as earth trees, others that seemed to glow with their own light. She had studied the maps carefully and knew where the shadow moths were most active. The creatures lived in a valley about 2 miles from the research station. Previous teams had tried to enter this valley with vehicles and weapons. Elena planned to walk in alone and sit quietly at the edge of their territory as she walked through the forest. Elena noticed how beautiful the planet was. Flowers in colors she had never seen grew along the path. Small animals watched her from the trees, curious but not afraid. This was a world full of life, and Elena understood why the Galactic Council wanted to preserve it. After 2 hours of walking, Elena reached the valley where the shadow moths lived. She could see why they had chosen this place. The valley was surrounded by tall rocks that provided protection. A small stream ran through the center, giving them fresh water. The forest was thick with plants that would hide them from enemies. Elena found a large rock about 100 yards from the valley's entrance and sat down. She pulled out her notebook and began to write down everything she observed. The valley seemed empty, but Elena knew the creatures were there, watching her. Hours passed. Elena sat perfectly still, moving only to write in her notebook. She ate a small lunch and continued watching. The sun moved across the sky, and Elena began to wonder if the shadow moths would show themselves at all. Then, as the afternoon light began to fade, Elena saw movement in the shadows of the valley. At first, it was just a flicker of black against the dark rocks. Then she saw them clearly. 3 shadow moths emerged from the forest. They moved like liquid darkness, their scales reflecting the light in strange ways. Elena's heart beat faster, but she forced herself to remain still. She was here to observe, not to interfere. The largest shadow moth was clearly the leader. It had scars across its face and moved with the confidence of a creature that had survived many battles. Elena decided to call it Scar in her notes. Behind Scar came 2 smaller creatures, probably younger members of the pack. Elena watched as the shadow moths moved through their territory. They were not the mindless killing machines that the reports described. Instead, they moved with purpose and intelligence. They checked the stream for fresh water, examined the rocks for signs of intruders, and communicated with each other using low rumbling sounds. Elena began to understand their behavior patterns. The shadow moths were not aggressive hunters looking for prey. They were protective guardians defending their home. Every action they took was designed to keep their territory safe from threats. As Elena watched, more shadow moths appeared. Soon she counted 8 creatures in the valley. They ranged in size from the massive Scar to what appeared to be juveniles that stayed close to the adults. Elena realized she was watching a family group, not a pack of killers. The most interesting discovery came when Elena observed how the shadow moths interacted with each other. They showed clear signs of affection and care. The adults groomed the young ones, removing dirt and parasites from their scales. When one creature found something interesting, It would call the others over to examine it together. Elena also noticed that the Shadow Maws had a complex social structure. Scar was clearly the leader, but the others were not afraid of him. They approached him freely and even seemed to disagree with his decisions sometimes. This suggested a society based on respect rather than fear. As the sun began to set, Elena prepared to leave. She had learned more about the Shadow Maws in one day than all previous research teams combined. But as she stood up to pack her things, something unexpected happened. Scar looked directly at her. Elena froze. The massive creature was staring at her from across the valley. Its eyes were not filled with rage or hunger, but with what looked like curiosity. Scar had known she was there the entire time and had chosen not to attack her for several minutes. Elena and Scar stared at each other. Elena felt her heart pounding, but she kept her face calm and her body still. She was a guest in their territory and she needed to show respect. Finally, Scar turned away and rejoined his family. Elena let out a breath she didn't know she had been holding. The creature had tested her and she had passed. She was not seen as a threat. Elena packed her things quietly and began the walk back to the research station. Her mind was racing with new ideas and observations. These creatures were not monsters. They were intelligent beings with complex social lives and strong family bonds. When Elena arrived at the station, the entire research team was waiting for her. Captain Harper rushed forward with obvious relief. "Elena, thank God you're safe. How did it go?" Elena smiled and pulled out her notebook. "Better than I hoped. I need to show you something." The team gathered around the main table as Elena shared her observations. She described the Shadow Maws' behavior, their social structure, and their obvious intelligence. "They're not killers," Elena said. "They're protectors. Every attack in the past happened because they were defending their territory from what they saw as invaders." Dr. Zektar shook his head. "But they killed hundreds of researchers. How do you explain that?" "Think about it," Elena replied. "Every research team came here with weapons, vehicles, and bright lights. They set up equipment in the creature's territory without permission. They acted like conquerors, not visitors." Jake Morrison leaned forward with excitement. "So you're saying they only attack when they feel threatened?" "Exactly," Elena said. "And I proved it today. I sat in their territory for 8 hours without weapons or aggressive behavior. They watched me the entire time, but they never attacked. The Alpha even made eye contact with me." The room fell silent. Even Dr. Zektar looked thoughtful. "If this is true," Harper said slowly, "then we might be able to coexist with them, but we need more proof. The Galactic Council won't be convinced by one day of observation." Elena nodded. "I know, that's why I'm going back tomorrow. And the day after that. I need to build a relationship with them, show them that not all visitors are threats." "How do you plan to do that?" Nexus 7 asked. Elena smiled. "The same way you build any relationship. With patience, respect, and understanding. I'm going to learn their language." As the team discussed Elena's plan, none of them noticed the figure watching from the forest. Scar had followed Elena back to the research station, curious about the strange human who had sat so quietly in his territory. For the first time in years, the great predator was not thinking about defending his home from invaders. Instead, he was wondering what this peaceful visitor might teach him about the world. Beyond his valley. The next morning, Elena would return to the valley, and Scar would be waiting for her. Elena woke up excited on her second day. She had barely slept, thinking about what she had learned. The Shadow Maws were not the monsters everyone believed them to be. Today, she would try something no researcher had ever attempted before. She would try to communicate with them. She packed her usual supplies and added something new, a small audio recorder that could play back sounds. If the Shadow Maws had a language, she wanted to learn it. She also brought different types of food, hoping to learn what they liked to eat. Jake Morrison met her at the station's exit again. He looked more hopeful than yesterday. "Elena, the whole team is talking about your observations. Even Dr. Zektar admitted that your theory might be correct." Elena smiled as she adjusted her backpack. "That's progress. But we need more than theories. We need real communication. Be careful out there, Jake said. Yesterday they watched you. Today they might decide to get closer, Elena nodded. I hope they do. That's the only way we'll learn to understand each other. The walk to the valley seemed shorter today. Elena felt more confident as she moved through the forest. The strange plants and animals no longer seemed threatening. Instead, they felt like old friends welcoming her back. When Elena reached her observation spot, she noticed something different. The rock where she had sat yesterday had been cleaned. Small pebbles and debris that had been scattered around were now arranged in neat patterns. Someone had been here after she left. Elena sat down and pulled out her notebook. She drew pictures of the arranged stones and wrote down her thoughts. The shadow moths had acknowledged her presence. This was their way of saying they knew she had been there. Elena waited patiently for the creatures to appear. She didn't have to wait long. Within an hour, Scar emerged from the forest with 2 other shadow moths. But this time, instead of staying in the valley, they came closer to Elena's position. Scar stopped about 50 yards away from Elena and sat down. The other 2 shadow moths positioned themselves on either side of him. Elena realized they were mirroring her behavior from yesterday. They were watching her just as she had watched them. Elena felt her heart beating fast, but she kept her movements slow and calm. She pulled out her notebook and began to write, just as she had done before. But this time, she was close enough to see the details of the creatures' faces. Scar was even more magnificent up close. His scales were not just black, but held hints of deep blue and purple. The scars on his face told stories of battles fought and won, but his eyes were the most surprising thing. They were intelligent and curious, not filled with rage or hunger. As Elena wrote in her notebook, she noticed that Scar was making soft rumbling sounds. The sounds seemed to follow a pattern, almost like a primitive language. Elena pulled out her audio recorder and began to capture these sounds. After recording for several minutes, Elena tried something bold. She played back one of Scar's rumbling sounds. The effect was immediate. All 3 shadow moths stood up and moved closer. They seemed excited by hearing their own sounds played back to them. Elena tried playing different sounds. Some made the creatures curious, others made them back away. She was learning which sounds had positive meanings and which had negative ones. It was like learning a new language, one sound at a time. The breakthrough came when Elena accidentally made a sound herself. She had been trying to copy one of Scar's rumbles, but her human voice could not make the exact sound. Instead, she made a higher-pitched version that sounded almost musical. Scar's reaction was immediate. He moved closer to Elena, only 20 yards away now, and repeated the sound she had made. Then he made his own version of the sound, deeper and more complex. Elena realized he was trying to teach her the correct pronunciation. For the next hour, Elena and Scar exchanged sounds. Elena would make a noise, and Scar would correct it or approve of it. The other 2 shadow moths watched with obvious interest. Elena felt like she was having her first real conversation with an alien species. The conversation was interrupted when more shadow moths arrived. Elena counted 6 creatures now, including what appeared to be a female with lighter-colored scales. Elena decided to call her Luna because of her silver markings. Luna approached Elena even closer than Scar had. She sat down only 10 yards away and began making soft clicking sounds. These sounds were different from Scar's rumbles. They were gentler, more melodic. Elena realized that the shadow moths might have different types of communication for different situations. Elena tried to copy Luna's clicking sounds. She was more successful this time, and Luna seemed pleased. The female shadow moth made a series of clicks that almost sounded like laughter. Elena found herself smiling at the sound. As the afternoon continued, Elena began to understand the basics of shadow moth communication. Deep rumbles seemed to indicate important information or commands. Soft clicking sounds were used for friendly conversation. Sharp barks were warnings or expressions of concern. The most important discovery came when Elena observed how the shadow moths communicated with their young. 2 juvenile shadow moths had joined the group, and Elena watched as the adults taught them different sounds. It was clear that the creatures had a complex language that was passed down from parents to children. Elena was so focused on learning their language that she didn't notice how late it was getting. The sun was setting and the forest was growing dark. She started to pack her things, but Luna made a series of urgent clicking sounds. Elena looked up to see all the shadow maws standing and looking toward the forest. Their body language showed they were alert and concerned. Elena heard it then, the sound of vehicles approaching through the forest. Elena's heart sank. Someone from the research station was coming to find her. The noise of the vehicles was loud and harsh in the quiet forest. Elena could see how the shadow maws reacted to the sound. Their peaceful behavior changed instantly to defensive alertness. Scar moved in front of Elena, positioning himself between her and the approaching vehicles. The other shadow maws spread out in a defensive formation. Elena realized they were protecting her from what they saw as a threat. 3 military vehicles burst through the trees, their bright lights cutting through the darkness. Captain Harper's voice came over a loudspeaker. Dr. Rodriguez, step away from the creatures immediately. We're here to extract you. Elena stood up slowly, her hands visible and empty. The shadow maws were becoming more agitated as the vehicles got closer. She could hear them making warning sounds. The sharp barks she had learned meant danger. Captain Harper, please turn off your lights and engines, Elena called out. The creatures are not hostile, but you're threatening them. Step away from them now, Harper's voice came back. That's an order. Elena looked at Scar, who was now between her and the vehicles. His scales had darkened to pure black, and his claws were extended. Elena realized the situation was about to become very dangerous. Please, Elena said, speaking to both the Shadow Maws and the rescue team. Nobody needs to get hurt here, but it was too late. One of the vehicles moved closer, its engine roaring. A young Shadow Maw, frightened by the noise and lights, ran toward the trees. The vehicle's automated defense system activated, sending a burst of energy that caught the creature in the leg. The young Shadow Maw cried out in pain and fell to the ground. The sound it made was heartbreaking, like a child calling for help. Elena saw red anger flash in Scar's eyes as he prepared to attack the vehicles. No, Elena shouted. She ran toward the injured creature, putting herself between the Shadow Maws and the military vehicles. Stop the engines! Turn off the weapons! Elena knelt beside the wounded Shadow Maw. It was one of the juveniles she had been observing. The energy burst had burned its leg, but the wound was not life-threatening. Elena pulled out her basic first aid kit and began to treat the injury. Luna approached carefully, making soft worried sounds. Elena looked up at her and made the same clicking sounds she had learned earlier. She was trying to tell Luna that the young one would be okay. As Elena worked on the wound, she felt the other Shadow Maws watching her. Scar was still alert and ready to fight, but he was also watching Elena heal one of his pack members. Elena could feel the weight of his attention. Elena, what are you doing? Captain Harper's voice came over the radio. What I came here to do, Elena replied without looking up. I'm proving that we can coexist with them. Elena finished bandaging the young Shadow Maw's leg. The creature made soft, grateful sounds and touched Elena's hand with its nose. It was a gesture of trust and thanks. Scar slowly approached Elena. The massive creature looked at the bandaged wound, then at Elena. He made a deep, rumbling sound that Elena had not heard before. It was a sound of approval and respect. Luna made clicking sounds that Elena was beginning to understand meant, thank you. The other Shadow Maws relaxed their defensive positions. The crisis was over. Elena stood up and faced the military vehicles. Captain Harper, I'm coming back now. But I want you to know that these creatures are not our enemies. They're our potential allies. As Elena walked toward the vehicles, she heard Scar make one final sound behind her. It was the same musical rumble they had practiced earlier. Elena turned and made the sound back to him. It was their first real conversation, and it wouldn't be their last. Elena woke up on her 5th day feeling different. The healing of the young Shadow Maw had changed everything. When she returned to the research station that night, even Dr. Zektar had admitted that her approach was working. The creatures had protected her from the rescue team and allowed her to heal their injured family member. This was behavior that no one had ever seen before. Jake Morrison was waiting for her with coffee and a smile. "Elena, the whole galaxy is watching now? News of what happened yesterday has reached the Galactic Council. They want daily reports on your progress." Elena felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. "No pressure, right?" she said with a tired smile. "Actually, there is pressure," Captain Harper said, joining them at the table. "Ambassador Lexmer from the Hegemony sent a message. He's not impressed by yesterday's events. He says one act of kindness doesn't prove the creatures are safe." Elena sighed. What would convince him? What would convince any of them? "Proof that the Shadow Maws can live peacefully alongside other species," Harper replied. "Real cooperation, not just tolerance." Elena gathered her equipment for another day in the valley. Today she planned to bring something new: food from the research station. She wanted to see if sharing meals might strengthen the bond she was building with the creatures. The walk to the valley felt like going home now. Elena knew every tree and rock along the path. The forest animals no longer hid from her. Some of the bird-like creatures even followed her. Curious about her daily journey, when Elena reached the valley, she found the Shadow Maws waiting for her. This had become their routine. Scar, Luna, and several others would gather near the edge of their territory to greet her. Today, however, something was different. The young Shadow Maw Elena had healed was standing with the group. Its leg was healing well, and it could walk without pain. When it saw Elena, it made excited clicking sounds and approached her carefully. Elena knelt down and gently examined the creature's bandaged leg. The wound was healing perfectly. She made soft clicking sounds to tell the young one that it was getting better. The creature responded with what sounded like happy chirping. Scar watched this interaction with obvious approval. He made deep rumbling sounds that Elena was learning meant good or correct. She was becoming part of their family, and Scar was showing his acceptance. Elena pulled out the food she had brought: protein bars designed for different alien species, dried fruits, and nutritional supplements. She offered small pieces to each Shadow Maw, curious to see what they preferred. The results were surprising. The creatures were not just meat-eaters as everyone believed. They enjoyed the sweet fruits and seemed particularly interested in the protein bars. Luna made happy clicking sounds as she ate a piece of dried alien fruit that tasted similar to Earth apples. After the meal, Elena noticed something remarkable. The Shadow Maws began showing her things they had never shared with outsiders before. Scar led her to a part of the valley where the ground was covered with intricate patterns made from colored stones. Elena stared at the patterns in amazement. They were not random decorations, but complex designs that told stories. Some patterns showed the history of the pack, others depicted the changing seasons on their planet. Elena realized she was looking at Shadow Maw art. "This is incredible," Elena whispered, making notes in her book. The creatures had culture, history, and artistic expression. They were not just intelligent animals, but a true civilization. Luna guided Elena to another area where young Shadow Maws were playing games. The games had rules and structure, requiring cooperation and strategy. Elena watched as the adults taught the young ones proper techniques and celebrated their successes. As the days passed, Elena's relationship with the pack deepened. She learned their individual names, or at least her versions of their calling. Sounds. Besides Scar and Luna, there was Thunder, a large male who served as the pack's scout. There was Whisper, a smaller female who seemed to be the pack's storyteller. And there was Star, the young one Elena had healed, who had become her constant companion. Elena began spending entire days with the pack, learning their customs and daily routines. She discovered they had complex social rules about sharing food, caring for the young, and resolving disputes. Their society was more sophisticated than many supposedly advanced civilizations. The breakthrough in their relationship came during Elena's second week with the pack. She had been feeling unwell for several days, fighting off a fever caused by the planet's atmosphere. Elena tried to hide her illness, not wanting to worry the research team, but the Shadow Maws noticed immediately. On the morning Elena could barely stand, Scar made concerned rumbling sounds and approached her carefully. He touched her forehead with his nose and immediately made urgent clicking sounds to the rest of the pack. What happened next amazed Elena. Luna and two other females surrounded her, making gentle supporting sounds. They guided her deeper into the valley, to a place Elena had never seen before. Hidden among the rocks was a natural hot spring. The water was warm and contained minerals that had healing properties. The Shadow Maws had brought Elena to their sacred healing place. Elena was too sick to protest. She allowed the creatures to help her into the warm water. The minerals immediately made her feel better, reducing her fever and easing her pain. Luna stayed with her the entire time, making soft comforting sounds. As Elena rested in the healing waters, she realized something profound had happened. The Shadow Maws were not just tolerating her presence anymore. They were caring for her as they would care for a member of their own family. Elena fell asleep in the warm spring, exhausted from her illness. When she woke up hours later, she found Luna curled around her like a protective blanket. The massive predator's body warmth had kept Elena safe and comfortable while she recovered. Elena looked into Luna's gentle eyes and made soft, clicking sounds that meant "thank you" in the Shadow Maw language. Luna responded with sounds that Elena was beginning to understand meant family or pack member. When Elena felt strong enough to move, the Shadow Maws escorted her back to the main valley. Star brought her fresh water in a large leaf cup. Thunder offered her some of the sweet roots the pack had gathered. Whisper made musical sounds that seemed designed to entertain and comfort her. Elena spent the rest of the day resting among the pack. She watched as they went about their daily activities, but now she was not an observer, she was a participant. The young ones played around her, the adults included her in their conversations, and the elders shared their wisdom through complex sound patterns. As evening approached, Elena knew she needed to return to the research station. She had been gone all day, and Captain Harper would be worried. But leaving the pack felt like leaving family. Scar approached Elena as she prepared to go. He made a series of sounds that Elena had never heard before. They were complex and meaningful, almost like a formal speech. Elena realized that Scar was giving her a name in their language. The sound he made was deep and musical, with clicks and rumbles that meant bridge builder or peace bringer. Elena tried to repeat the sound, and Scar nodded with approval. She now had a Shadow Maw name. Luna and Star accompanied Elena partway back to the research station. They had never ventured this close to the human settlement before, but their concern for Elena overcame their caution. At the edge of the forest, they said goodbye with gentle touching of noses and soft farewell sounds. Elena walked the final distance alone, but she no longer felt like an outsider on this planet. She had found a new family among the galaxy's most feared predators. More importantly, she had proven that understanding and respect could overcome fear and prejudice. When Elena reached the research station, she found the entire team waiting for her. Jake Morrison rushed forward with obvious relief. "Elena!" "We? We're so worried. You've been gone for 12 hours. Elena smiled and pulled out her notebook, which was now filled with detailed observations about Shadow Maw culture and society. "I've been learning," she said, "and I think I'm ready to make a formal presentation to the Galactic Council." Captain Harper looked at Elena's confident expression. "What kind of presentation?" "The kind that will save this planet," Elena replied. "I want to invite the Council here to meet the Shadow Maws personally. It's time for first contact between our species." Dr. Zektar, who had been quietly supportive of Elena's work, stepped forward. "Elena, that is extremely dangerous." "What if the council members are attacked?" Elena looked back toward the forest where her new family lived. "They won't be attacked. The Shadow Maws are not monsters. They're people just like us. And it's time the galaxy learned the truth." As Elena shared her experiences with the research team, none of them noticed the figure watching from the forest edge. Scar had followed his new pack member home, ensuring her safety on the journey. He had heard the strange sounds the humans made when they talked, and he was beginning to understand that Elena's people were as complex as his own, Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight both Human and Shadowmaw had found something precious, the beginning of true friendship between species. The Day of Judgment arrived with 12 massive ships hanging in the sky above. Kepler 442b, the Galactic Council fleet, was impressive and terrifying. Each ship carried enough weapons to turn the planet into burning rock. Elena stood at the research station's observation deck, watching the ships through the morning mist. Captain Harper joined Elena at the window. High Chancellor Morduk arrived an hour ago. He brought representatives from every major species in the galaxy. They're expecting either a demonstration of control or a justification for planetary destruction. Elena felt the weight of an entire world on her shoulders. How many are coming down to the surface? 50 council members, plus their guards and scientific advisors. About 200 beings total. Harper paused. Elena, are you absolutely certain about this? If even one council member gets hurt, They won't, Elena said with more confidence. Then she felt, Scar and his pack understand what today means. They want to save their world as much as we do. The landing shuttles began arriving at noon. Elena watched as beings from across the galaxy stepped onto the surface of Kepler 442b. She recognized some species from her studies, the tall, blue-skinned Altarians, the reptilian Vorthak with their colorful scales, the insectoid Chitauri with their clicking voices, and dozens of others. High Chancellor Morduk was exactly what Elena had expected. He was a massive creature from the warlike hegemony species, with thick gray skin and small, suspicious eyes. He wore heavy armor and carried weapons that could probably destroy a building. Dr. Rodriguez, Morduk said in a voice like grinding stone, I have traveled across the galaxy to see these tame predators of yours. I hope for your sake that this is not a waste of time. Elena forced herself to remain calm. Thank you for coming, Chancellor. I think you'll find today very educational. The council members gathered in a large clearing that Elena had chosen carefully. It was at the edge of Shadowmaw territory, but not inside their sacred valley. She wanted to show respect for both sides in this historic meeting. Elena had spent the previous week preparing the Shadowmaws for this encounter. She had explained, as best she could in their language, that visitors would come who needed to learn that Shadowmaws were peaceful beings. Scar had understood immediately. His pack would demonstrate their intelligence and gentleness to save their world. Where are these creatures? Demanded Ambassador Thexmer, the hegemony representative who had opposed Elena's research from the beginning. We have been waiting for 10 minutes. They'll come when they're ready, Elena replied. Forced demonstrations don't work with intelligent beings. Dr. Zektar, who had become one of Elena's strongest supporters, stepped forward to address the council. Honorable representatives, Dr. Rodriguez has made discoveries that challenge everything we thought we knew about these creatures. I ask that you observe with open minds. As if summoned by his words, the Shadowmaws appeared. They emerged from the forest like living shadows, moving with the fluid grace that had made them legendary. But today they moved differently. Instead of the aggressive hunting formation that had terrified so many researchers, they approached in a peaceful line. With Scar leading and the young ones protected in the center, several council members stepped backward in fear. Guards raised their weapons, but Elena quickly moved to block them. No weapons, she said firmly. That will only provoke them. Scar stopped about 20 yards from the council gathering. He was magnificent in the afternoon sunlight, his scales reflecting rainbow colors that Elena had never seen before. The massive predator looked directly at High Chancellor Morduk and made a deep, formal rumbling sound, Elena translated. He says, greeting you in the traditional manner of his people. He's saying welcome to his territory and offering you safe passage. Safe passage? Morduk laughed harshly. From a beast? Elena felt anger flash through her, but she controlled it. From a leader greeting other leaders with respect. What happened next amazed even Elena. Luna approached carrying something in her mouth. She set it down in front of the council members and stepped back. It was a beautiful crystal formation, perfectly shaped and colored. Elena realized it was A gift offered in the tradition of diplomatic first contact. They're giving us a present, Elena explained. This is how they begin formal relationships with other groups, Ambassador Thexmer scoffed. Trained animals can be taught to carry objects. This proves nothing. Scar seemed to understand the dismissive tone, even if he didn't know the words. He made a series of complex sounds to his pack. What followed was a demonstration that left the entire council speechless. The Shadow Maws began to create art. Working together with perfect coordination, they arranged colored stones in intricate patterns on the ground. The patterns told the story of their planet from its creation to the arrival of the first space travelers. They showed the peaceful animals of their world, the changing seasons, and finally, the coming of Elena and the beginning of friendship between species. Impossible, whispered Dr. Veltar, a Chitauri scientist. This level of abstract thinking, artistic expression, cultural memory. These are not animals. Thunder, the pack scout, demonstrated their intelligence in a different way. He had been watching the council members carefully and began to mimic some of their gestures and postures. When he perfectly copied Ambassador Thexmer's aggressive stance, several council members laughed despite themselves. Young Star, the Shadow Maw Elena had healed, approached the gathering with obvious curiosity. The young creature had never seen so many different species before. It moved from being to being, making gentle clicking sounds that Elena recognized as polite greetings. When Star reached High Chancellor Morduck, the massive predator youngling did something unexpected. It offered the Chancellor a small flower it had picked from the forest. The gesture was so innocent and friendly that even Morduck's stern expression softened slightly. They learn quickly, Elena said. Star has never seen a hegemony citizen before, but it recognizes that you're important and wants to show respect. The real test came when Ambassador Thexmer decided to challenge Elena's claims. If these creatures are truly peaceful, then they should not react when threatened. He signaled to his guards, who raised their weapons and began advancing toward the Shadow Maws. Elena's heart stopped. This was exactly what she had feared. The Shadow Maws immediately shifted into defensive positions, their scales darkening to pure black. Scar moved to protect his pack, and Elena could see the tension building toward violence. Stop! Elena shouted, but the hegemony guards continued advancing. The Shadow Maws prepared to defend themselves. But Elena did something that surprised everyone. She ran forward and placed herself directly between the weapons and the creatures. She spread her arms wide, making herself a human shield for the pack. If you want to hurt them, you'll have to go through me first, Elena declared. For a moment, the clearing was completely silent. Then Scar did something that no one expected. Instead of attacking the guards who threatened his family, he moved. To stand beside Elena, Luna joined him, then Thunder, then Whisper, then all the adult Shadow Maws. They formed a protective circle around Elena, showing that they valued her life as much as their own. Young Star, not understanding the danger but following the adult's example, nestled against Elena's leg and made soft, comforting sounds. Hi. Chancellor Morduck raised his hand, and the guards lowered their weapons. The massive leader studied the scene before him. A human woman protected by creatures that could kill her in seconds. Creatures that chose loyalty over violence even when threatened. Remarkable, Morduck said quietly. In my 300 years, I have never seen such trust between species. Elena knelt down and hugged Star, then reached out to touch Scar's massive head. The great predator leaned into her touch like a gentle giant. This is what we could have, Elena said to the assembled council. Not fear and destruction, but cooperation and friendship. These beings have families, culture, art, and the capacity for love. They're not monsters, they're people. Doctor. Veltar spoke first. The evidence is clear. These creatures possess intelligence, emotional complexity, and social structures that qualify them for protection under galactic law. Other council members began to agree. Elena watched as opinions changed around the circle. Even some of the hegemony representatives nodded their approval. Ambassador Thexmer remained stubborn. One demonstration does not prove they can coexist with colonists and miners. Scar seemed to understand the challenge. He made a series of sounds to his pack, and they began to demonstrate their daily activities. They showed how they gathered food without damaging plants, how they shared resources fairly, how they cared for their young and elderly. It was a complete picture of a sustainable, peaceful civilization. High Chancellor Mordek watched everything carefully. Finally, he stepped forward and addressed Elena directly. Dr. Rodriguez, you have shown us something unprecedented. These creatures have earned the right to exist peacefully on their world. He turned to the council. I propose that Kepler 442b be declared the galaxy's first interspecies cooperation zone. The vote was overwhelming. Only 3 council members opposed the measure, and they were outvoted by 47 others. Elena felt tears of joy running down her face. Star noticed her crying and made worried sounds, trying to comfort her.